The rain poured relentlessly over Seattle, turning the city streets into shimmering ribbons of light beneath the street lamps. Thunder rolled across the sky as ambulances raced through the traffic, their sirens slicing through the storm like desperate cries for help. Inside St. Gabriel Medical Center, the emergency department never slept. Doctors hurried between trauma rooms, nurses called out vital signs, stretchers rolled across polished floors, monitors beeped endlessly. For most people, it was chaos. For Dr. Evelyn Carter, it was home. At 34 years old, Evelyn had earned a reputation as one of the finest pediatric emergency physicians in Washington. Parents trusted her. Children smiled the moment they saw her gentle face. Even on the worst nights, when every second meant the difference between life and death, her hands never trembled. Not because she was fearless, because life had already broken her once. Nothing inside an emergency room could hurt more than the day she lost everything outside of it. Tonight marked her 17th consecutive hour on duty. She hadn't eaten since sunrise. Coffee had gone cold beside her workstation. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, but she ignored them. Across the hall, a 7-year-old girl recovering from pneumonia smiled weakly as Evelyn adjusted her blanket. "You'll be home before your birthday," Evelyn whispered. The little girl grinned. Moments like these reminded Evelyn why she never regretted choosing medicine. Not fame, not money, just one more child going home alive. Before she could leave the room, the overhead speaker suddenly echoed through the department. "Code pediatric trauma, ETA, 2 minutes. Every conversation stopped. The entire ER instantly shifted gears. Nurses rushed toward Trauma Room 1. Respiratory therapists prepared ventilators. Crash carts rolled into position. Evelyn slipped on fresh gloves while calmly reading the incoming report. Male child, 4 years old, severe respiratory distress, possible cardiac instability, unresponsive. "Let's move," she ordered. Outside, rain exploded against the ambulance doors as paramedics sprinted toward the entrance. The automatic doors burst open. A soaked man jumped out before the stretcher had even stopped moving. His expensive suit was drenched. His face carried the look of someone who had already imagined losing everything. In his arms lay a tiny boy. The child's lips had turned blue. His breathing came in frightening little gasps. His small fingers barely moved. "Please," the man shouted with the voice cracking under panic. "Somebody save my son." Evelyn didn't waste a second. She lifted the child onto the trauma bed. Airway. Oxygen. IV access. Prepare pediatric intubation. The team moved with military precision. Everything else disappeared. There was no rich family, no crying parent, no screaming. Only one mission: save the child. Evelyn placed her stethoscope against the boy's chest. His heartbeat was dangerously irregular. His breathing sounded wrong. Not asthma, not choking. Something else. Something she couldn't explain yet. "Come on, sweetheart," she whispered. "You stay with me." The child suddenly coughed violently before his tiny body went limp. The heart monitor screamed. One nurse looked at Evelyn. "What now, doctor?" Without hesitation, Evelyn began directing the entire trauma team. Epinephrine ready. Blood gases. Portable ultrasound. "I want toxicology and infectious disease panels immediately." Several residents exchanged confused looks. Those weren't the standard first tests. But nobody questioned Dr. Carter. Her instincts had saved countless children before. While the team worked, the frightened father stepped closer. His voice trembled. "Doctor, please, you have to save him." Evelyn reached for another syringe. Then she finally looked up. Their eyes met. Time stopped. The syringe nearly slipped from her hand. Standing only a few feet away was Adrian Brooks, the man she had once promised forever, the man who had shattered that promise 3 years ago, the man who had walked away without ever looking back for one endless heartbeat. Neither of them spoke. Adrian stared at her in complete disbelief. "Evelyn," he whispered. She hadn't heard him say her name in years. Not since the divorce papers arrived. Not since he chose ambition over the family they had dreamed of building together. The memories crashed into her all at once. The empty apartment, the unsigned anniversary card, the final argument, the silence. But the monitor beside the child suddenly shrieked again. Reality returned. Evelyn pushed every emotion deep inside her heart. Not now, not here. She wasn't an abandoned wife anymore. She was a doctor, and lying in front of her wasn't the man who broke her. It was an innocent little boy fighting for his next breath. Without another glance at Adrian, she continued giving orders. "Increase oxygen. Start another IV. I want full blood work. No one leaves this room until we know what's happening." Adrian opened his mouth as if trying to apologize. No words came out. For the first time in years, he looked completely powerless outside the trauma room. A beautifully dressed woman hurried through the hallway in expensive heels, tears streaming down perfectly applied makeup. She rushed toward the glass doors. "Where's my son?" she cried. Hospital security stopped her before she entered. She looked toward Evelyn with an expression that wasn't only fear. It almost looked like panic. Real panic. Not because the child might die, but because of something else. Something she desperately hoped no doctor would discover. Inside the trauma bay, Evelyn noticed one tiny detail that everyone else had missed. The boy's wrist carried a faint bruise, barely visible, almost hidden beneath the hospital bracelet. It wasn't fresh, it wasn't accidental. And somehow, the child's pupils reacted in a way that didn't match the symptoms of any normal allergic reaction. Evelyn slowly looked back toward the observation window. The elegant woman quickly looked away. Something wasn't right, not even close. As thunder shook the hospital windows once more, Dr. Evelyn Carter made a silent promise to herself. Tonight, she wouldn't just save a child's life. She was going to uncover the truth, no matter who it destroyed. The trauma room slowly grew quieter. The frantic alarms that had filled the room only minutes earlier were now replaced by the steady rhythm of heart monitors. Every member of the emergency team released the breath they had been holding. For now, the little boy was alive. Barely. Dr. Evelyn Carter stepped away from the bedside and removed her blood-stained gloves. She wasn't satisfied. Something about this case felt completely wrong. The child's oxygen levels had improved faster than expected, yet his heartbeat remained strangely unstable. It didn't fit any illness she had seen before. She glanced at the medication tray. Nothing unusual. Then she looked back at the boy. His tiny fingers were tightly curled around the hospital blanket, even though he was unconscious. Almost as if he'd gone to sleep terrified. Outside the trauma room, Adrian Brooks stood frozen behind the glass. 3 years had passed since he had last seen Evelyn. She looked different, not older, stronger. The pain that once lived openly in her eyes had disappeared behind calm professionalism. She hadn't asked him how he was. She hadn't even looked at him again. To her, He wasn't an ex-husband. He was simply another worried parent waiting outside an operating room. That realization hurt far more than he expected. A nurse approached Evelyn. "Doctor, the child's vitals are stabilizing." Evelyn nodded. "Good. But don't move him yet. I want another complete examination." The nurse looked surprised. "Again?" "Yes. Something doesn't add up." Just then, the elegant woman waiting outside hurried toward Evelyn. Her designer coat was still dripping with rain. Her makeup had been ruined by tears. Or at least, it looked that way. "My son. Can I see him now?" Evelyn looked directly into her eyes. "What is your name?" The woman hesitated for only a second. "Vanessa Brooks." "I'm his stepmother." Evelyn quietly nodded. "And where were you when he collapsed?" Vanessa answered almost too quickly. "We were having dinner. He suddenly couldn't breathe." It all happened so fast. Evelyn continued watching her. Years in emergency medicine had taught her one thing. People often lied with their words, but almost never with their timing. Vanessa had answered before thinking, almost as though she had rehearsed the story. Across the hallway, Adrian interrupted. "Doctor..." It wasn't exactly like that. Vanessa immediately looked toward him. Their eyes met for only a moment. But it was enough. Evelyn noticed it. One silent glance, one unspoken warning. Adrian lowered his voice. "He complained about feeling sick nearly an hour before dinner." Vanessa quickly smiled. "Oh, that's right. I completely forgot." Evelyn didn't respond. Instead, she quietly wrote something inside the patient's chart. A few minutes later, the laboratory technician arrived to collect blood samples. As Evelyn prepared the forms, she noticed a small brown medicine bottle inside the child's backpack. It had no pharmacy label, no doctor's name, no prescription sticker, just a handwritten letter. M. She picked it up carefully. "Whose medicine is this?" Vanessa answered immediately. "Just vitamins." Adrian frowned. "I've never seen that bottle before." The hallway suddenly became silent. Vanessa forced a laugh. "I bought it online. It's completely harmless." Evelyn slowly sealed the bottle inside an evidence bag. "I'll have the pharmacy identify it." Vanessa's smile disappeared. "Is that really necessary?" Evelyn looked up. "For any unidentified medication?" "Always." Nearly an hour later, the little boy slowly opened his eyes. His breathing remained weak, his vision blurry. Evelyn pulled a chair beside the bed. "Hi, buddy. I'm Dr. Carter. You gave us quite a scare." The child looked around nervously. His eyes searched the room, not for his father, not for his toys, not even for water. He was looking toward the door, almost as if checking whether someone was standing outside. Evelyn noticed the fear immediately. "It's okay. You're safe here." The boy swallowed painfully, then whispered only 3 words. "So, quiet, please." "What do you mean?" He slowly shook his head. His breathing became faster. "I wasn't supposed..." Before he could finish, the heart monitor suddenly sped up again. Evelyn gently squeezed his hand. "No more questions. You need to rest." The little boy closed his eyes again, but one tear rolled silently down his cheek. Outside the room, Adrian watched everything through the glass. "What did he say?" he asked. Evelyn closed the chart. "He needs rest." "Nothing else." Her answer sounded professional, but inside, her instincts were screaming louder than ever. Children didn't wake from medical emergencies afraid of speaking. They woke afraid of pain, needles, hospitals, not talking. Minutes later, the toxicology lab called. The senior technician sounded unusually serious. "Dr. Carter, We're finding traces of something unusual. We're running the sample again. It doesn't match any common medication." Evelyn slowly looked toward the child's room. Her heartbeat became steady, cold, focused. She thanked the technician and hung up. Across the hallway, Vanessa had secretly been watching the entire phone call. The moment Evelyn ended it, Vanessa quietly reached into her purse, pulled out her cell phone, and sent a single text message. "She's testing the blood. We may have a problem." She hit send, then immediately deleted the conversation. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the hospital windows. But inside St. Gabriel Medical Center, the tension had only grown heavier. Dr. Evelyn Carter hadn't gone home. She had changed into fresh scrubs, grabbed another cup of coffee, and returned to the pediatric intensive care unit. Something deep inside told her this case wasn't over, not even close. The little boy, Noah, remained asleep under light sedation. His breathing was finally stable. His heartbeat had returned to normal. To everyone else, it looked like another successful emergency. To Evelyn, it looked like the beginning of a mystery. She quietly reviewed every lab report again. Blood chemistry, normal. Brain scan, normal. Heart ultrasound, normal. Then she reached the toxicology report. Her eyes narrowed. One line had been highlighted in red. "Unknown synthetic compound detected. Sample forwarded for advanced analysis." Unknown. That almost never happened. Hospitals identified thousands of medications every year. For a laboratory to classify something as unknown meant one thing. Whatever had entered Noah's bloodstream wasn't an ordinary prescription drug. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Doctor?" It was Detective Daniel Hayes, the hospital's liaison officer. Whenever a child's illness appeared suspicious, hospital policy required law enforcement to be notified. Daniel entered carrying a thin folder. "I've read the preliminary report." "Anything concerning?" Evelyn hesitated. "I don't have proof. But my instincts are telling me someone isn't telling the whole truth." Daniel nodded. "I had the same feeling after speaking with the family." He opened the folder. "Your patient's father says Noah became sick during dinner. The stepmother says he started coughing after dessert. But..." Daniel slid another page across the desk. "The restaurant manager reviewed their security cameras. They never ordered dessert." Silence filled the office. One lie. Small, but important. People rarely lied about meaningless details. Meanwhile, on the third floor, waiting lounge, Adrian Brooks sat alone, staring at a family photo on his phone. It had been taken only 3 months earlier. Him, Vanessa, Noah. Everyone smiling, looking at it now. Something felt different. He zoomed in. Behind Noah's smile, there was something he had never noticed before, a faint bruise near the child's neck. He frowned. When did that happen? He couldn't remember. At that exact moment, his phone vibrated, a message from Vanessa. "Where are you?" Another message followed seconds later. "Don't talk to anyone without me." Adrian stared at the screen. It wasn't concern. It sounded like instructions. Back in the PICU, Noah slowly opened his eyes again. This time, Evelyn was alone with him. She smiled gently. "Good morning, champ." Noah managed a weak smile. "My chest hurts. I know, but you're getting stronger." He looked around the room. "Is Daddy here?" "Yes." "And Vanessa?" Evelyn noticed the fear return immediately. His tiny hands tightened around the blanket. "I don't want her to come in." Evelyn's expression changed. "You don't?" He slowly shook his head. Then he whispered something so quietly she almost missed it. "She gets angry when I tell Daddy things." Evelyn remained completely calm. "What kind of things?" Noah looked toward the door. His breathing quickened. Then he whispered, "The medicine." Before Evelyn could ask another question, the room door suddenly opened. Vanessa stepped inside, carrying a stuffed teddy bear. Her smile appeared warm. Perfect. Almost too perfect. "There you are, sweetheart." She walked toward the bed. The moment Noah saw her, his smile disappeared. He pulled the blanket tightly against himself. Children rarely hid emotions. Fear couldn't be rehearsed. It couldn't be faked. Evelyn saw it clearly. Noah wasn't uncomfortable. He was terrified. Vanessa placed the teddy bear beside him. "I brought your favorite friend." Noah didn't even look at it. Instead, he quietly reached for Evelyn's hand, just for a second. That tiny gesture said more than any sentence ever could. Later that afternoon, the advanced toxicology laboratory finally called. Evelyn answered immediately. The specialist sounded unusually cautious. "Dr. Carter, we've identified part of the compound. It isn't commercially available." Evelyn sat upright. "What does that mean?" A brief silence followed. Then came the answer. "It appears to be a developmental pharmaceutical compound." Experimental. It should never be in a child's bloodstream. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. Experimental. Only licensed research facilities had access to substances like that. This wasn't an accident anymore. Someone had given Noah access to something that wasn't even legally available to the public. Across town, inside a sleek glass office building, an unknown man watched the city skyline from his corner office. His phone buzzed. One message appeared. "The doctor knows it wasn't natural." The man calmly locked his phone. Without showing the slightest emotion, he spoke to the woman standing beside him. "Move to Plan B." She nodded once. "No mistakes this time." The office fell silent. Outside, the Seattle skyline looked peaceful. Inside, a dangerous game had just begun. 3 hours passed without incident. For the first time since Noah had been admitted, the pediatric intensive care unit felt almost peaceful. Nurses quietly completed their rounds, monitors beeped at a steady rhythm, and exhausted parents slept in waiting chairs. Dr. Evelyn Carter stood outside Noah's room, reading the latest laboratory findings for the third time. The report confirmed her worst fear. The substance found in Noah's blood wasn't sold in pharmacies. It wasn't approved by the FDA. It wasn't even listed in the National Medical Database. Someone had access to an experimental compound that should have existed only inside highly secured research laboratories. She closed the folder. "This isn't child abuse anymore," she whispered. "This is something much bigger." Detective Daniel Hayes joined her moments later. "I checked every pharmaceutical company within 50 miles, he said. "Only 3 facilities are licensed to work with compounds similar to this." Evelyn folded her arms. "Any connection to Adrian Brooks?" Daniel looked down at his tablet. After a few seconds, he nodded. "There is." Evelyn's heart tightened. Daniel continued. "Brooks Global Health recently invested millions into one of those research companies." Silence. Adrian's company. She couldn't believe it. Was it just business or something darker? At the same time, Adrian sat beside Noah's hospital bed. His son was finally awake. "Daddy," Noah whispered weakly. Adrian smiled and held his tiny hand. "I'm here, buddy." "You scared me." Noah looked toward the door before speaking. "Daddy?" "You promised no one would be angry." Adrian frowned. "What do you mean?" Noah hesitated, then quietly asked, "If I tell you the truth, will you still love me?" Adrian's eyes filled with tears. "There is nothing you could ever say that would change that. The little boy took a shaky breath. I didn't take the medicine by myself. Before he could continue, the hospital lights suddenly flickered. Then, the entire floor went dark. Emergency generators activated within seconds. Red backup lights illuminated the hallway. Alarms echoed through the intensive care unit. Nurses rushed in every direction. Power interruption. Check all ventilators. Verify life support systems. Inside Noah's room, one monitor suddenly went flat. A nurse gasped. The IV pump stopped. Evelyn ran into the room. What happened? The infusion line has been disconnected. She immediately checked Noah. His oxygen level was dropping again. Bag him now! A respiratory therapist grabbed the manual ventilation bag while Evelyn searched for the cause. Then she saw it. The IV tubing hadn't failed. Someone had cut it, cleanly, with a sharp blade. Evelyn slowly looked toward the open doorway. Someone had entered the room during the blackout. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Hospital security immediately sealed the pediatric floor. Every visitor was questioned. Every employee's ID badge was scanned. Daniel reviewed security footage. Then his expression changed. Evelyn, you need to see this. The cameras had stopped recording for exactly 93 seconds. Not because of the power outage, because someone had remotely disabled the recording system 2 minutes before the lights went out. This wasn't an accident. It had been planned. Meanwhile, Vanessa sat alone inside the family waiting room. She looked terrified, not angry, not defensive, terrified. Her hands trembled as she repeatedly dialed the same phone number. No answer. She whispered to herself, "Please, pick up." Finally, the call connected. Before she could speak, a cold male voice interrupted. "You were told this would stay under control." Vanessa closed her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," the man replied calmly. "Then fix it." The call ended. Vanessa stared at the blank screen for the first time. It became clear that she wasn't giving orders, she was receiving them. Later that evening, Detective Hayes received another report. This one wasn't from the laboratory. It came from hospital administration. Dr. Carter. Someone tried accessing Noah's electronic medical records. When? 20 minutes ago. From inside the hospital, Evelyn immediately asked, "Who logged in?" The IT supervisor hesitated. "The account belongs to a physician." Evelyn's heartbeat slowed. "Which physician?" The supervisor swallowed hard. "Your account." The room fell silent. Evelyn stared at the screen in disbelief. Someone had used her identity to alter the child's medical records. If the evidence disappeared, she would become the prime suspect before anyone could react. A security officer rushed into the office. "Dr. Carter." "Someone's trying to leave through the underground parking garage." Detective Hayes grabbed his jacket. "Let's move." As they raced toward the elevator, a black SUV accelerated out of the hospital parking structure. Its license plate was covered with mud. Its windows were completely tinted. Daniel memorized only one detail before the vehicle disappeared into the night. A silver logo on the back window. Helix Biotech, the same research company connected to Adrian Brooks' investment portfolio. Evelyn watched the SUV vanish into the rain. Now she understood one terrifying truth. This had never been about a custody battle or a broken marriage. Someone was willing to sabotage hospital systems, frame an innocent doctor, and risk a child's life, just to keep one secret buried, and whoever was behind it had only just begun their attack. The rain had finally stopped. For the first time in nearly 24 hours, pale morning sunlight spilled across the windows of St. Gabriel Medical Center. The city outside looked calm, almost peaceful. Inside the hospital, nothing felt peaceful. Dr. Evelyn Carter stood in the conference room, staring at dozens of photographs spread across the table. Noah's laboratory reports, security camera timelines, hospital access logs, the damaged IV tubing, the unidentified pharmaceutical compound. Every clue pointed toward the same conclusion. Someone hadn't tried to hurt Noah by accident. Someone had planned everything. Detective Daniel Hayes entered, carrying another folder. "I finally got the warrant." Evelyn looked up. "For Helix Biotech?" Daniel nodded. "And you're not going to like what we found." He placed several documents on the table. Helix Biotech had secretly funded a confidential pediatric drug project 18 months earlier. The project had failed during animal testing. The compound caused severe heart rhythm disturbances in young subjects. The research was immediately suspended. Officially, every remaining sample had been destroyed. But according to the inventory records, 3 vials were missing. Nobody had ever reported them stolen. Evelyn slowly closed the folder. "So someone still had access." Daniel nodded. "And someone used one of those missing samples." At that same moment, Adrian Brooks sat alone in the hospital chapel. He hadn't slept. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His face looked years older than it had the previous day. For the first time since building his billion-dollar healthcare empire, money couldn't solve his problem. His son nearly died, and he had no idea who was responsible. The chapel door quietly opened. Evelyn stepped inside. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. "I know you probably hate me." Evelyn remained calm. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about Noah." Adrian lowered his head. "I invested in Helix, but I never managed the research. I only financed it." Evelyn studied his face for the first time in years. She believed he was telling the truth. Just then, Detective Hayes rushed into the chapel. "We have another problem." Everyone immediately stood. The laboratory that identified Noah's blood sample. It caught fire 20 minutes ago. Adrian stared at him. "An accident?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "No." The fire department confirmed arson. Every copy of the original research had just been destroyed, or so someone believed. Back in the hospital, Noah was awake. He looked stronger than before. Evelyn smiled warmly as she entered his room. "How are you feeling today, buddy?" "A little better." She sat beside him. "I need your help." "You don't have to be scared anymore. The bad people can't hurt you here." Noah looked toward the window. After a long silence, he whispered, "I saw him." Evelyn leaned closer. "Who?" "The man who gave Vanessa the medicine." Evelyn's expression changed. "What man?" "He came to our house. He wore a blue badge. He said Daddy's company made children healthy, but Vanessa cried after he left." Evelyn immediately called Detective Hayes. Within minutes, hospital security enlarged every visitor photograph connected to Helix Biotech. Noah quietly pointed at one face. "That's him." The room became silent. The man wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't even listed on Helix's research team. He was Richard Kane, Helix Biotech's chief financial officer. Daniel frowned. "The CFO?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "It makes sense." Daniel looked confused. She continued. "If the experimental project became public, Helix would lose billions. Investors would disappear. The company would collapse. Daniel finally understood. So Noah was never the target. Evelyn slowly looked toward the sleeping child. No, he was the evidence. That afternoon, federal agents surrounded Helix Biotech headquarters. Employees watched through the glass walls as investigators carried away computers, financial records, and confidential files. Richard Kane attempted to leave through a private underground exit. He never made it. FBI agents stopped him before he reached his car. Hidden inside his briefcase, investigators found 2 remaining vials of the same experimental compound, along with confidential payment records. One name appeared repeatedly: Vanessa Brooks. Hours later, inside an interview room, Vanessa finally broke down. She cried harder than she ever had before. I never wanted Noah to get hurt. Evelyn quietly watched from behind the observation glass. Vanessa continued through tears. Richard threatened me. He said if I refused, he would destroy Adrian's company and expose something that would ruin all of us. Detective Hayes interrupted. So you agreed? Vanessa nodded helplessly. He told me it was only a harmless supplement. I believed him. When Noah became sick, I realized I'd been used. She buried her face in her hands. I tried to fix it, but it was already too late. Days later, Noah was finally discharged from the hospital. Doctors lined the hallway as he slowly walked toward the exit, holding his father's hand. This time, he wasn't afraid. He smiled at every nurse he passed. When he reached Evelyn, he stopped, then quietly hugged her. Thank you for saving me, Evelyn smiled. You were the brave one. Outside the hospital, television reporters surrounded Adrian Brooks. Microphones stretched toward him from every direction. One reporter shouted, "Mr. Brooks, do you have anything to say after the Helix scandal?" Adrian looked toward the hospital entrance, where Evelyn stood, watching silently. He took a deep breath. I spent years believing success meant protecting a company. I was wrong. The most important thing I almost lost was standing in that hospital room. He looked down. I also lost someone years ago because I stopped listening when it mattered most. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Without answering another question, he walked away holding Noah's hand. A week later, life inside St. Gabriel Medical Center had returned to normal. Children laughed in the hallways. Nurses hurried between patient rooms. Ambulances continued arriving. The work never stopped. Evelyn stood beside the same window where everything had begun. Another emergency call echoed through the hospital. She smiled, picked up her stethoscope, and walked toward the trauma bay without hesitation. Some scars never disappear. Some betrayals are never forgotten. But compassion is stronger than heartbreak. Because on the day the man who broke her life came begging for help, she didn't choose revenge. She chose to save an innocent child. And in doing so, she saved herself too.